when 11-year-old Tyler Whitfield sat in a Denny's booth off Interstate 15 in Barstow at 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in November, 3 days after a man claiming to be a family friend had taken him from a park in Henderson, Nevada, with a lie about his mother being in an accident, then threatened to kill her if Tyler tried to escape or call for help. The boy made the most desperate calculation of his young life as he watched a man in a Hells Angels vest eating dinner 2 booths away. That single word, written on a napkin in shaking handwriting, help, slid to the edge of the table where Vincent Ghost Moreno could read it, would trigger a confrontation that ended with Vincent physically blocking the exit and detaining the trafficker until police arrived, then spark a 6-month investigation that dismantled an international trafficking network spanning 3 states and 2 countries, resulted in 23 arrests, recovered 11 other children who'd been taken, and forged an unbreakable bond between a traumatized boy and the Brotherhood that refused to let a monster walk out the door with him. The Denny's on Interstate 15 outside Barstow, California had been serving truckers, travelers, and drifters since 1973. It was the kind of place where the coffee was always hot, the pie was always decent, and nobody asked too many questions. At 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in early November, Vincent Ghost Moreno walked through the glass doors, his black leather Hells Angels vest catching the fluorescent light as the hostess grabbed a menu without looking up. "Just one tonight, booth or counter?" "Booth. Back corner if you've got it." Vincent was 54 years old, vice president of the Hells Angels San Bernardino chapter for the past 9 years. Former homicide detective who'd spent 18 years with LAPD before the job hollowed him out and the Brotherhood filled him back up. He stood 6 feet even, with a shaved head that gleamed under the diner lights and a salt and pepper goatee trimmed close. The patches on his vest, the winged death's head on his back, the vice president rocker across his chest, the AMC San Bernardino bottom rocker, marked him as someone most people instinctively gave space to. His eyes, dark brown and perpetually watchful, were the eyes of a man who'd seen too much death to ever stop looking for it. He slid into the corner booth, back to the wall out of old habit, and ordered coffee and a turkey club from a waitress named Donna, who'd been working this Denny's longer than some of the customers had been alive. The place was maybe a third full, a few truckers at the counter, a family of 4 finishing up near the windows, a couple of college kids sharing a laptop and endless refills, and a man with a boy 2 booths away. Vincent noticed them the way he noticed everything, automatically, cataloging details without conscious effort. The man was white, late 30s or early 40s, wearing khakis and a blue polo shirt, clean-shaven, with the kind of generic face that didn't stick in memory. Average height, average build, average everything. The kind of man who could disappear into any crowd. The boy was maybe 11 or 12, small for his age, with sandy brown hair that needed cutting and a face that was trying very hard to show nothing at all. He wore a gray sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and jeans that were clean but worn. He sat across from the man, hunched over a plate of pancakes he wasn't eating, pushing the food around with his fork in the universal gesture of a kid who'd been told to eat, but had no appetite. Something about the pair tugged at Vincent's attention. He couldn't name it yet, just a whisper of wrongness, the kind of instinct that had kept him alive through 18 years of homicide investigations and 15 years of MC life. The man was talking, voice too low to hear from Vincent's booth, leaning forward with what might have been paternal concern, but felt somehow performative. The boy never looked up, never responded, never moved except to push those pancakes around. Vincent's coffee arrived. He thanked Donna, took a sip, and continued watching from his peripheral vision. The man flagged down their waitress, said something about getting the check, smiled in a way that was probably meant to be charming. The boy flinched, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. But Vincent had spent nearly 2 decades reading body language for lies and fear. That flinch was fear. The waitress brought the check. The man reached for his wallet, and the boy did something that changed everything. He reached for a napkin from the dispenser on the table. His hand was shaking. Vincent could see the tremor even from 15 feet away. The boy pulled a pen from somewhere. Maybe his pocket. Maybe it had been sitting on the table, and wrote something on the napkin. One word, written fast, the pen pressing hard enough that Vincent could see the indentation even from a distance. Then the boy looked up, not at the man, who was counting bills from his wallet. The boy looked directly at Vincent, met his eyes with a gaze that held more desperation than any child should know, and slid the napkin to the edge of the table closest to the aisle. Vincent could read the word from where he sat. 4 letters, written in a child's hand, shaky but clear. Help. The boy held Vincent's gaze for 3 seconds, long enough to make sure the message was received, long enough to silently plead, long enough to risk everything, and then dropped his eyes back to his untouched pancakes as if nothing had happened. The napkin sat at the edge of the table like a grenade with the pin pulled. Vincent set his coffee down carefully. His heart rate hadn't changed. Years of training had burned away panic responses, but his entire focus had narrowed to that booth, that boy, that single word written on a Denny's napkin. The man finished counting his money, left cash on the table, and stood. Come on, buddy. Time to hit the road. The boy didn't move. Tyler. The man's voice sharpened just slightly. Let's go. Tyler. The boy's name was Tyler. Vincent filed it away automatically as he stood from his own booth, leaving his untouched sandwich and half-drunk coffee, and walked toward the aisle. He reached the napkin before the man and boy could pass, picked it up casually, as if he'd dropped something of his own, looked at it, looked at the boy, Tyler, whose face had gone pale with terror and hope. Then Vincent looked at the man. Evening, Vincent said, his voice calm, almost friendly. Couldn't help but notice you're in a hurry. Everything okay? The man's smile was automatic, practiced. Just a long drive ahead. Come on, Tyler. His hand moved to Tyler's shoulder. The boy flinched again. That full-body recoil that Vincent had seen in abuse victims, in trafficking survivors, in children who'd learned that touch meant pain. Vincent stepped into the aisle, blocking their path to the exit. Actually, I was hoping you could help me with something. See, I found this napkin on the floor, and it's got a message on it. Wondering if maybe one of you dropped it. He held up the napkin, the word help facing the man. The man's smile flickered, his eyes calculated. That's not ours. Excuse us. Thing is, Vincent continued, not moving, I'm pretty sure I saw this young man write it, and I'm pretty sure he meant for me to see it. So I think we should all sit down and have a conversation about what's going on here. I don't know what you're talking about. Tyler, tell the man you didn't write that. Tyler's mouth opened. No sound came out. His eyes darted between Vincent and the man, terror and hope warring on his small face. Tyler, Vincent said gently, you don't have to be afraid. Whatever's happening, I'm going to help you. But I need you to tell me the truth. Did you write this? The boy's eyes filled with tears. He nodded once, small and terrified. He's lying, the man said quickly, his voice rising. He's my son. He has behavioral problems. He does things like this for attention. Tyler, tell him I'm not his son. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence of the diner it carried like a shout. I don't know him. He took me from a park 3 days ago. Please, please don't let him take me. Hit subscribe if you believe in real heroes. Comment where you're watching from and share this with someone who needs to remember that one word written on a napkin can save a life. Now let me tell you about what happened when a Hell's Angel refused to let a monster walk out the door. Vincent's training took over. Calm, methodical, absolutely certain. He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and spoke without taking his eyes off the man. "This is Vincent Moreno. I'm at the Denny's on I-15, mile marker 178, Barstow. I have a possible child abduction in progress. Male suspect, late 30s, khakis, and blue polo. Child victim, approximately 11 years old, named Tyler. Child states he was taken from a park 3 days ago and does not know this man. I'm detaining them until officers arrive. Send units immediately." The man's mask cracked. Vincent watched it happen in real time. The pleasant, forgettable face transforming into something calculating and dangerous. "You're making a mistake," the man said, his voice dropping to something cold. "You don't know what you're getting into." "I spent 18 years as a homicide detective with LAPD," Vincent replied evenly. "I know exactly what I'm getting into. And I know what a scared kid looks like when he's been taken by someone who shouldn't have him. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit back down in that booth, and you're going to keep your hands where I can see them, and we're all going to wait for the police. Or you can try to leave, and I'll stop you. Your choice." The man's eyes flicked to the exit, calculating distance and odds. Vincent shifted his weight, making it clear that getting past him would require a fight. Around them, the diner had gone silent. Donna, the waitress, stood frozen behind the counter. The truckers at the bar had turned to watch. The family near the windows was gathering their children, moving toward the back. "You can't hold me," the man said. "This is false imprisonment. I'll have you arrested." "Try me." The man moved, fast, explosive, going for the exit with the desperate speed of someone who knew what prison meant. Vincent intercepted him in 2 steps, using his body to block the path, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it behind his back with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd made 1,000 arrests. "I said sit down." The man struggled. Vincent applied pressure until he stopped. "Tyler," Vincent called out, his voice gentle despite the physical confrontation. "I need you to go to the counter and stay with the waitress. Her name's Donna. She's going to keep you safe until the police get here. Can you do that?" Tyler stood frozen, shaking, tears streaming down his face. "Tyler, honey." Donna's voice cut through, maternal, reassuring. "Come here, sweetheart. Come stand with me. That man's not going to hurt you anymore." Tyler moved, 1 step, then another. Then he was running to the counter, to Donna, who wrapped her arms around him and pulled him behind the barrier. Vincent forced the man into the nearest booth, keeping his arm twisted, keeping control. "Don't move. Don't speak. We're going to wait right here." "You don't understand," the man said through gritted teeth. "You don't know who I work for. You don't know what's going to happen to you." "You don't know who I work for either," Vincent replied. "And I promise you, what's going to happen to me is nothing compared to what's going to happen to you." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly closer. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies arrived in force. 4 cruisers, 8 officers, responding to a child abduction call at a highway diner with overwhelming resources. Vincent identified himself, explained the situation, and stepped back to let law enforcement take over. The man, who had no identification on him, no wallet, nothing but cash and a set of car keys, was handcuffed and separated from the scene. Tyler was gently interviewed by a female deputy while Donna stayed close, providing the maternal presence the boy desperately needed. "Tyler, can you tell me your full name?" the deputy asked softly. "Tyler James Whitfield." "And where are you from, Tyler?" Henderson, Nevada, outside Las Vegas. Can you tell me what happened?" The boy's story came out in fragments, broken by tears and fear and the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. He was 11 years old. He lived with his mother, Sarah Whitfield, in a small apartment in Henderson. 3 days ago, Sunday afternoon, he'd been at a park near their apartment complex, playing basketball with some neighborhood kids. A man approached him, said his mother had been in a car accident, said he was a friend of the family and needed to take Tyler to the hospital immediately. Tyler had believed him. He'd gotten in the car. They'd driven for hours. There was no hospital. There was no accident. There was only a man who said Tyler was going to meet some people who would take care of him, and a drive that seemed to never end. "Did he hurt you?" the deputy asked gently. Tyler shook his head. He said if I tried to run or call for help, he'd hurt my mom. He said he knew where she lived, knew where she worked, and if I didn't do exactly what he said, he'd go back and kill her. So I did what he said. But tonight, his voice broke. Tonight I saw that man in the leather vest, and I thought maybe he looked like someone who could help. So I wrote on the napkin. I didn't know if he'd see it. I didn't know if anyone would help, but I had to try. The deputy looked at Vincent, who stood at a respectful distance, watching. "You saw the napkin?" He slid it to the edge of the table where I could read it. One word: help. Then he looked right at me to make sure I'd seen it. "Kids got more courage than most adults I know." "And you detained the suspect?" "Blocked the exit, called 911. Kept him from leaving with the boy until you arrived. Former LAPD homicide. I know how to handle a situation without escalating." The deputy nodded, making notes. "We're going to need your full statement. But first, Tyler's mother. We need to contact her." Tyler's mother, Sarah Whitfield, answered her phone on the first ring. She'd been awake for 72 hours, had filed a missing persons report Sunday night, had been told by Henderson police that Tyler had probably run away, that 11-year-olds did that sometimes, and had been systematically ignored ever since. When she heard her son's voice on the phone, she collapsed. "Tyler! Tyler! Oh God, Tyler, where are you? Are you okay? Baby, are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mom. I'm at a police station in Barstow. A man helped me, a biker. He wouldn't let the bad guy take me." Sarah Whitfield drove through the night, 3.5 hours from Henderson to Barstow, and arrived at the sheriff's station at 4:23 a.m. The reunion, mother and son, separated for 3 days by a predator, and reunited by a child's desperate courage and a biker's refusal to look away, happened in the station lobby, while deputies and Vincent watched. Tyler ran to his mother. She fell to her knees. They held each other and cried, the kind of crying that came from a place beyond words. Vincent stood back, giving them space. Donna, the waitress, had come to the station too, unwilling to leave until she knew the boy was safe. She dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. "You saved his life," Donna said quietly to Vincent. "That man was taking him somewhere terrible. You know that, right? You saved his life." "Tyler saved his own life," Vincent replied. "He wrote the word. He took the risk. I just made sure it wasn't wasted." Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that courage comes in all sizes. Sometimes it's a biker refusing to let a monster walk free, and sometimes it's an 11-year-old boy with a napkin and a pen risking everything on the chance that someone might care enough to help. Your attention to scared children in your community could be the difference between a trafficking victim disappearing forever and a boy going home to his mother. The investigation that followed Vincent's intervention would eventually uncover one of the largest child trafficking networks operating in the American Southwest. The man in the Denny's, whose real name was David Allen Marsh, 41 years old, no fixed address, was a transporter. His job was to acquire children and deliver them to buyers. Tyler had been acquired in Henderson and was being transported to a location in Arizona where he would have been sold. But David Marsh didn't work alone. Vincent made a phone call that night, not to the police, but to his president, Marcus Reaper Santino. "Reaper, it's Ghost. I've got a situation. Kid in the Denny's wrote help on a napkin and slid it to me. I stopped the guy taking him. Cops have him in custody. But this isn't a one-off. This guy's a transporter for something bigger. I can feel it. You want to dig?" Reaper's voice was calm, unsurprised. He'd known Vincent long enough to trust his instincts. "I want to dig deep. I think this leads somewhere we need to go. You've got full support. Whatever resources you need, whatever brothers you need. Find out who this guy was delivering to, and let's make sure they never receive another delivery." Over the following weeks, the Hells Angels San Bernardino chapter conducted an investigation that ran parallel to law enforcement's, not interfering, not impeding, but using resources and connections official channels couldn't access. Wire, the chapter's tech specialist, former NSA contractor who'd left the agency for reasons he never discussed, traced David Marsh's phone records, email accounts, and financial transactions. The picture that emerged was horrifying in its scope. Marsh had transported at least 14 children over the past 3 years. He operated on a circuit that ran from Nevada through California to Arizona, picking up children from parks, schools, shopping centers, anywhere they might be momentarily unsupervised. He used the same story every time. "Your parent is hurt. I'm a family friend. Come with me." The children were delivered to a network of buyers, some domestic, some international. The prices range from $15,000 for younger children to $50,000 for specific requests. The network had contacts in law enforcement, in social services, in communities across the Southwest that helped them identify vulnerable children and cover their tracks. "This is bigger than one guy," Wire reported to the chapter leadership. "This is organized, this is funded. And based on the communications I'm seeing, Marsh was supposed to deliver Tyler to a location in Tucson. Someone was waiting for him." "Who?" Vincent asked. "Working on it. The buyer used encrypted channels, but no encryption is perfect. Give me time." Meanwhile, Vincent coordinated with FBI Special Agent Diana Vasquez, a trafficking specialist who'd been tracking this network for 2 years without a breakthrough. The arrest of David Marsh, and more importantly, the testimony he eventually provided in exchange for a plea deal, gave her the evidence she needed to move on targets she'd been watching for months. "Your intervention saved more than Tyler's life," Agent Vasquez told Vincent during one of their coordination meetings. "Marsh is talking. He's giving us names, locations, buyers. We've already recovered 3 other children based on his information. There may be more." "What do you need from us?" Vincent asked. "Officially? Nothing. This is a federal investigation." She paused. "Unofficially? I know your club has resources and reach that I don't. If you hear anything, see anything, learn anything that could help us find more of these kids, I want to know." "You'll know," Vincent promised. The Hells Angels San Bernardino chapter worked in tandem with federal investigators for the next 6 months. Wire tracked financial transactions that led to shell companies and foreign accounts. Brothers and other chapters across the Southwest kept eyes on locations that might be safe houses or transfer points. Vincent used his old LAPD contacts to identify dirty cops and compromised social workers who'd been providing information to the network. Piece by piece, the network was dismantled. In January, FBI raids across 3 states arrested 17 people connected to the trafficking operation. The buyers, including a doctor in Scottsdale, a retired military officer in Albuquerque, and a tech executive in Las Vegas, were charged with federal trafficking offenses, carrying life sentences. In February, the FBI recovered 8 more children who had been held in various safe houses across the network. Some had been missing for months. Some had been missing for years. All were returned to families who had never stopped searching. In March, the investigation led to international connections, a network based in Eastern Europe that had been purchasing children from the American operation for resale overseas. Interpol became involved. More arrests followed in Romania, Ukraine, and Moldova. The total count, when the investigation finally concluded: 23 arrests, 11 children recovered, an international trafficking pipeline permanently dismantled. All because an 11-year-old boy wrote help on a napkin. All because a biker refused to let a monster walk out the door. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Gentle Wheels. Because what happened next would prove that healing takes time, but hope is stronger than trauma, that found families form in the most unexpected places, and that a single act of courage can create ripples that save lives years into the future. The investigation was just the beginning. Tyler's journey back to wholeness would require a different kind of intervention. Tyler Whitfield spent the first month after his rescue barely speaking. He'd been home for 3 days when the nightmares started. Every night, the same terror. The man in the car, the endless driving, the threats against his mother. He'd wake screaming, convinced the man was coming back, convinced his mother was dead, convinced the rescue had been a dream, and he was still trapped in that car, heading towards something too terrible to name. Sarah Whitfield did everything she could. She took time off work, what little she could afford, to be with Tyler. She found a child psychologist who specialized in trauma, scraping together money for sessions that weren't covered by her minimal insurance. She held Tyler when he cried, sat outside his bedroom door when he couldn't sleep, reassured him 100 times a day that he was safe, that the man was in prison, that no one would ever hurt him again. But Sarah was struggling herself. Single mother, working 2 jobs, drowning in medical bills and therapy costs, and the guilt of not being at the park that Sunday when her son was taken. She'd lie awake at night wondering what she'd done wrong, how she'd failed to protect him, whether he'd ever be the same. Vincent kept in touch, at first just checking in, phone calls to Sarah asking how Tyler was doing, if they needed anything. Then, as weeks passed and he heard the exhaustion in Sarah's voice, the desperation beneath her reassurances, he started showing up. The first time he came to their apartment in Henderson, he brought groceries. Not a lot. Just enough to fill the refrigerator, to take one worry off Sarah's plate. Tyler hid in his room the whole time, but Sarah cried when she saw the bags. "You didn't have to do this." "No, I didn't, but I wanted to. You're not alone in this, Sarah. Your son showed incredible courage, and that courage deserves to be supported." The second time Vincent came, he brought 2 other brothers from the chapter, Doc, who'd been a paramedic before joining the MC, and Wire, who had kids of his own and knew how to talk to traumatized children without making them feel pressured. They stayed for dinner. Tyler came out of his room halfway through, drawn by the smell of the pizza they'd ordered, and sat at the edge of the table, watching the bikers with wary curiosity. Wire told stories about his own kids, funny stories, embarrassing dad moments, the kind of normalcy that had been stripped from Tyler's life. By the end of the meal, Tyler had smiled twice, small smiles, fragile and brief, but smiles nonetheless. The third time, Vincent came alone. He asked Sarah's permission, then knocked on Tyler's bedroom door. "Tyler, it's Vincent. The guy from the Denny's. Mind if we talk? A long pause. Then quietly, okay. Vincent entered, sat on the floor with his back against the wall, not crowding the boy. Tyler sat on his bed, knees pulled to his chest, watching Vincent with eyes that still held too much fear. I wanted to thank you, Vincent said. Tyler frowned. Thank me? For what? For writing that word on the napkin. For taking that risk. You know what would have happened if you hadn't done that. Tyler's face went pale. He knew. But because you did it, because you were brave enough to ask for help, when you were terrified, you're home, you're safe. And more than that, because you spoke up, because you told the police everything you knew about that man, we found other kids. Kids he'd taken before you. Kids who are home with their families now because you were brave. Tyler stared at him. Other kids? 11 of them, all saved because you wrote one word on a napkin. The boy's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know that. I wanted you to know. I wanted you to understand that what you did mattered. Not just for you, for all of them. You're a hero, Tyler, a real one. And I know it doesn't feel that way. I know you're scared and hurting, and you have nightmares about what almost happened, but you should also know that you saved lives, including your own. That took more courage than most people have in their entire lives. Tyler cried then, not the terrified crying of his nightmares, but something different. Release, the beginning of healing. Vincent didn't leave. He sat with Tyler while the boy cried, then talked to him about what courage really meant. Not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. He told Tyler about his own fears, his own moments of doubt, his own nightmares from years as a homicide detective. He made the boy see that being afraid didn't make him weak. When does it stop? Tyler asked. The being scared. When does it go away? Fades, Vincent said honestly. It doesn't disappear completely. Not for a long time, maybe not ever. But it fades. It gets quieter. And eventually, you learn to live with it. You learn that you're stronger than the fear. That you survived the worst thing that ever happened to you, and you're still here. That's what matters. Over the following months, the Hells Angels San Bernardino chapter became part of Tyler and Sarah's life. Brothers took turns checking in, bringing food, helping with household repairs that Sarah couldn't afford to hire out. Doc coordinated with Tyler's therapist, helping track the boy's progress and alerting Sarah when warning signs emerge. Wire set up a college fund, modest but growing, because Tyler had mentioned once casually that he'd wanted to be a computer programmer before everything changed. The chapter's annual toy drive that Christmas included a special stop at Tyler's school, where 50 bikers showed up to deliver presents to underprivileged kids. Tyler stood in the crowd watching, no longer hiding from the men in leather. And when Vincent caught his eye, the boy smiled. A real smile. The first one that reached his eyes. Is that the kid? Reaper asked, following Vincent's gaze. That's him. Tyler Whitfield, 11 years old, wrote help on a napkin. Hell of a kid. Hell of a kid. Spring brought progress and setbacks. Tyler returned to school. Different school, fresh start. Sarah had moved them to a new apartment complex where no one knew their story. He made friends slowly, carefully, testing each relationship like someone walking on ice that had cracked before. His grades improved. His therapist reported breakthroughs. But there were still nights when the nightmares came. Still days when he couldn't leave the apartment because the outside world felt too dangerous. Still, moments when a stranger's voice or a car door slamming would send him spiraling into panic. Vincent came when those days happened, sometimes with other brothers, sometimes alone. He'd take Tyler for rides on his bike. The boy had grown to love the feeling of speed and freedom, the wind drowning out the thoughts in his head. They'd ride for hours through the desert, not talking, just existing in the moment. You ever think about what you're going to do when you grow up? Vincent asked during one of those rides, pulled over at a rest stop, watching the sunset paint the desert red. I want to help kids, Tyler said. Kids like me, kids who get taken. I want to find them and bring them home. That's a good goal. Will you teach me? Teach you what? How to find people, how to save them, how to be like you. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. I'll teach you everything I know, but you've got to promise me something first. What? Graduate high school. Go to college. Learn as much as you can about computers and technology and investigation. Don't just be a biker who helps people. Be the best. Be someone who changes things. Can you promise me that? Tyler nodded solemn. I promise. By the 1-year anniversary of Tyler's rescue, the transformation was remarkable. The boy who'd barely spoken for a month after coming home was now a straight-A student with friends and plans and a future. The nightmares still came, but less often. The fear still surfaced, but he'd learned to manage it. Sarah had changed too. She'd gone back to school, online courses in social work, paid for in part by a scholarship the Hells Angels had quietly arranged. She wanted to help other families, other mothers whose children had been taken. She wanted to turn her worst nightmare into purpose. Vincent organized a gathering at the chapter clubhouse, unofficial, but significant. Tyler and Sarah were invited to a barbecue with the full chapter, 50 brothers and their families, celebrating 1 year since a napkin and a Denny's changed everything. Reaper stood before the gathering, Tyler beside him, and addressed the assembled members. Brothers, most of you know this kid. His name's Tyler Whitfield. A year ago, he was being transported by a trafficker to be sold. He was 11 years old, terrified, and completely alone. And he did something that most adults wouldn't have the guts to do. He wrote help on a napkin and trusted a stranger to care enough to act. Reaper looked at Tyler, his weathered face softening. That stranger was our brother Ghost, and he did what any of us would have done. He refused to let a monster walk out the door with a child. But the hero of this story isn't Ghost, it's Tyler. Because without his courage, without that one word on that napkin, none of us would be here. He turned back to the crowd. Tyler's rescue led to an investigation that took down a trafficking network operating across 3 states and 2 countries. 23 predators in prison. 11 children recovered. An international pipeline shut down permanently. All because this kid, he put his hand on Tyler's shoulder, refused to give up. The bikers applauded. Not the polite applause of obligation, but genuine thunder. Leather-clad men and women, honoring a 12-year-old boy who'd done something extraordinary. Reaper held up a small leather vest, child-sized, black, with a custom patch on the back, a small angel with wings spread, and the words, "Protected by Hell's Angels," embroidered beneath. Tyler, this vest is for you. It's not a membership. You're way too young for that, and your mom would kill us anyway. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But it's a promise. It means that every brother in this club, and every brother in every Hells Angels chapter across the country, will protect you. It means your family. It means you're never alone again. Tyler took the vest with trembling hands, held it against his chest, and cried. Not from fear this time, from belonging. From the overwhelming realization that he'd found something he'd never expected, a family that chose him. He put on the vest. It fit perfectly. Sarah watched her son, this boy who'd been broken and was slowly rebuilding, surrounded by men and women who looked like society's outcasts, but acted like guardian angels. She'd spent her whole life being told that bikers were dangerous, criminal, people to avoid. She'd never been more grateful to be wrong. 5 years later, Tyler Whitfield graduated from high school as valedictorian. His speech mentioned a Denny's in Barstow, a napkin with one word written on it, a man in a leather vest who refused to look away. Vincent sat in the audience, older now, gray in his goatee, where there had been only salt and pepper, but still wearing his Hell's Angels vest. Beside him sat Sarah, who'd completed her social work degree, and now ran a nonprofit helping families of trafficking victims. Behind them sat 2 rows of Hell's Angels, brothers who'd watched Tyler grow from a traumatized 11-year-old into a young man with purpose and direction. 5 years ago, Tyler said from the podium, I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. I learned that help can come from the most unexpected places, sometimes from people society tells us to avoid. And I learned that one word, written on a napkin in a desperate moment, can change everything. He looked at Vincent. To the man who taught me that I was stronger than what happened to me, thank you. To the brothers who became my family, thank you. To my mom, who never gave up on me, thank you. Tyler Whitfield enrolled at University of Nevada, Las Vegas that fall, majoring in criminal justice with a minor in computer science. His goal, stated in his application essay, was to work in crimes against children, to be on the side of rescue, of protection, of bringing kids home. Vincent visits him once a month. They still go for rides through the desert, still talk about courage and fear and what it means to protect the innocent. Wire's College Fund covered Tyler's tuition. The chapter's support continued, not charity, but family. Tyler spent summers interning with Agent Diana Vasquez, learning the investigative techniques that had dismantled the network that nearly destroyed his life. Sarah's nonprofit, called One Word, named for the napkin that saved her son, has helped 200 families navigate the aftermath of trafficking and abduction. She speaks at conferences, trains law enforcement, and advocates for better resources for victims' families. The Denny's on Interstate 15 is still there, still serving truckers and travelers and drifters. Donna still works the night shift, older now, but with the same maternal warmth that comforted a terrified boy 5 years ago. There's a photo behind the register. Tyler at his high school graduation, wearing his cap and gown, flanked by Vincent on one side and his mother on the other. Behind them, visible through the gymnasium doors, a row of motorcycles. Underneath the photo, in Tyler's handwriting, sometimes help comes from unexpected places. Always write the word. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that courage takes many forms, sometimes it's a biker refusing to let evil escape. Sometimes it's a child risking everything on the chance that someone will care. Please share it. Subscribe to Gentle Wheels for more stories proving that family is defined by action, not blood. That one moment of intervention can create ripples that save lives for years to come, and that asking for help is never weakness. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been helped by someone unexpected? Have you seen courage in the smallest acts? Have you witnessed what happens when someone refuses to look away? Because right now, somewhere, another child is deciding whether to take a risk. Whether to write a word, make a sign, mouth a please across a crowded room. Whether anyone will care enough to notice. Be the person who notices. Be the person who refuses to let them walk out the door. Be the person who makes one word enough. Tyler Whitfield is 22 now. He graduated from UNLV last spring, top of his class, and joined the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit as a trainee analyst. His first case, a missing 11-year-old in Phoenix, was solved in 48 hours. The child recovered safely. The trafficker arrested. He still wears the leather vest with the angel patch, keeps it in his closet, takes it out when he needs to remember what he survived, what he overcame, what he became. Vincent retired from active MC life last year, though he still wears his patches, still shows up to chapter meetings, still rides when his joints allow it. He's 60 now, slower than he was, but with the same watchful eyes that spotted a boy's desperation in a Denny's 7 years ago. They meet once a year at that same Denny's, same booth where Vincent was sitting when Tyler slid the napkin to the edge of the table. They order coffee and pie and talk about the year past, the year ahead, the lives saved, and the work remaining. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Tyler asked during their last meeting. "What's that?" "What would have happened if you hadn't been there? If you'd chosen a different restaurant that night? If you'd been looking at your phone instead of watching the room?" "I think about it too," Vincent admitted. "I try not to, but I do. I'd be dead. Or worse. Probably. But you were there. You were watching. You saw the napkin." Tyler paused. "Why? Why were you paying attention?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. 18 years as a homicide detective. You learn to watch. You learn that danger hides in plain sight, that evil looks ordinary, that the only thing standing between a victim and a monster is sometimes just one person paying attention. I couldn't turn it off, even after I left the job. Still can't. That's why you saved me. That's why I noticed. You saved yourself, Tyler. You wrote the word. You took the risk. I just made sure it wasn't wasted." Tyler smiled. The full, genuine smile of a young man who'd walked through hell and come out the other side. "Thank you," he said, "for being the person who noticed." "Thank you," Vincent replied, "for being brave enough to ask." They finished their coffee as the desert sunset painted the sky outside the windows. Two men, one who'd spent his life seeking justice, one who was just beginning, connected by a single word, written on a Denny's napkin 7 years ago. Help. One word. 4 letters. A moment of desperate courage that changed everything. That's the story. That's the truth. That's what happens when a child finds the strength to ask, and an adult finds the courage to answer. The napkin is framed now, hanging in Tyler's apartment. Faded, worn, but still legible. A reminder of where he came from. A promise of where he's going. And in Denny's restaurants across America, every night, truckers and travelers and drifters eat their meals and drink their coffee, never knowing that in this ordinary place, an extraordinary act of courage once saved a life. Watch the people around you. Pay attention to the children. Notice the fear in a child's eyes, the flinch at a touch, the desperation behind a smile that doesn't reach. And if someone writes help on a napkin, believe them. Because sometimes that's all it takes. One word. One person who refuses to look away. One moment that changes everything.